Hey, welcome back, audience. Hope you're doing good. I want to record a little video about what I think to be the most important law. I don't know if you heard about Prime Directive, and it's this idea that a higher developed species do not intervene with lower developed species, and apparently, allegedly, this is why the Earth is in some sort of like a quarantine because of that Prime Directive. And the Prime Directive says that you cannot intervene with the development of the species. Now, I think that Prime Directive was completely misunderstood. And if it is indeed the case that there's somebody enforcing that law, um, then that law is actually, because it's not correct, it is a belief system. And that is the root of all evil. This misunderstanding of what Prime Directive means is the root of all evil. And so I want to explain a little more about this. The true Prime Directive is about closing the specific movement or a portal, if you will. You can use many words, but it is a specific movement of, on a personal level, it's like a brain invading your psyche. I've mentioned that before, but perhaps I can phrase it better. There's a process in your consciousness that must be sort of like shut down or diverted into another direction. There is a process in your consciousness that causes all the other beliefs. If you take that off, if that one thing off, everything else falls down, what is not right, and falls back into place. So then that is the true Prime Directive. The Prime Directive, and this is the only thing that you gotta do with your consciousness to make everything all right, is to shut down that process or guard that portal, if you will. What it does, it takes the forces that are producing the systems that are artificial, are they diverted into technological world, and they're not allowed in political and social and economic world. I believe, I don't believe I've discovered it within my own consciousness, because by diving deep in my own consciousness, I can know exactly what the fuck is going on outside. And it is, it has to go. That misunderstanding of Prime Directive has to go. Because what's really going on is the higher species, in this case in your own consciousness, that would be, you can call it your higher self, higher mind, logos, has to be in charge. What the logos has to be in charge with, which is making sure that the ambient and the conditions for the species to develop are ripe. For example, if I were to just take the seed and just throw it in the jungle and say, well, you on your own, you're going to be fine, chances are that just nothing's going to happen and that nothing's going to grow out of that seed. But if I, so to speak, incubate and care for it until it's strong enough to survive, and then I plant it in the jungle, then it has the chance to survive. Same thing in this case. Externally would be the higher evolved species, the ones that do have impact and authority over the astral engineering, so to speak. And there's this belief system that is masquerading as a prime directive, saying that they cannot do that, because that's intervening with the species. That's exactly what they must be doing. It's not an intervention in the sense that they're going micromanaging. It is creating the conditions in which the species can develop normally. And the only role that they're supposed to be doing is, if you will, guarding that astral portal, if you will. This is the reason why, like in early 90s, 1900s in the United States, all these laws suddenly became corrupted. Like this Federal Reserve happened, all these other things, and all these. There were a lot of wealthy people that are good-hearted, and oopsie daisy, they all drown in one ship. You see what I'm trying to say? And then suddenly the balance of power disappeared, and the people who meant to be taking care in their own jurisdiction, which is running the businesses and technology, the dark souls, they went into jurisdiction that's not allowed, and so therefore now they corrupted the entire code of the society. Okay, that is of course cannot be allowed. It's just like letting a plague eat your plant and saying, well, I don't want to intervene, I want to see how strong that plant is. And well, you're just going to kill that plant. And so this is why, to me, this law, this prime directive law, it is misunderstood, and it's not the true prime directive. And like I said, the true prime directive is this one action that you can do to put everything in the right place, and that action exists. That's prime directive. And it's basically, if I were to say in normal terms, it is having your attention exactly where it needs to be, where it is required. It is not easy to keep the attention there because everything is trying to take away from that attention. But if you do that, then everything else will fall into place. And that is a prime directive. And on a collective level, on the intergalactic level and whatnot, it's the exact same thing. You if you want your soul to grow and be happy and play, you've got to protect the conditions for that soul to grow, because soul is like almost, actually your soul is more like a plant than an animal. And so you've got to take care of the development of the soul. So that's supposed to be the duty of the people who are enforcing the true prime directive. So it's all bullshit. And like, I'm just hearing things. I've not seen it myself. What I'm saying here, I've discovered as a structure of consciousness within myself. And because everything outside of me is kind of fractal, and the representation of that, I suspect that it's very likely that there's such thing as Galactic Federation, which playing one role is to make sure that you don't break this false prime directive. And so then there, of course, that's basically serving evil. Not that these dark souls are evil. When you let them in a jurisdiction where they're not allowed, that becomes evil. This is why it's not about fighting, it's not about wars, it's about appropriating and not letting them get into jurisdiction where they're not allowed. And they will be totally happy in the jurisdiction where they are allowed, because they're still functioning at the level of program, and they don't have connection with the source, and they don't have access to logos, and only logos can make sure that the society is run well. It's the vibration. And so to ban the access for these higher species to access Earth and change the structure as astral structures, or not, or prevent certain astral structures to appear, because everything starts with an astral, and that's how later it becomes regulation or a law or whatever corrupt bullshit that happens on Earth. And then, of course, it's very easy to blame people and say people from Earth are toxic as fuck. Of course they're toxic, because they fucking live in a swamp. Of course they're gonna be toxic. And to leave that hive mind, it takes incredible dedication and incredible courage and incredible surrender just to gain that escape velocity to get the fuck out of there. It's very difficult to do this, and it's not supposed to be this way. And that's the only reason I can discover the truth about the Prime Directive, because I did escape from the hive mind and I see everything very clearly. And that's only one law that I have to listen within myself in order to make sure that my consciousness and my surroundings and the people around me are moving in the right direction of consciousness. And I have a capacity to protect myself and the people around me. But it's a small scale. I would like the people who are in the position to renegotiate the true meaning of Prime Directive and stop enforcing the law that breeds evil. Everything starts, all evil has a root, and that is the root that is celebrated as some sort of, that's the way we live by. It's a belief put into the law and creates you know it's unbelievable. Like I said, I don't know if it's true, but I hear that there is an organization that dedicated and has military influence and all that stuff, dedicated to protect this Prime Directive. And that's what they are saying that the Prime Directive is. It is, let's not intervene. And of course, that's very clever and profitable for these dark souls to hack the system and to trick the minds of people who are supposed to be wise. To me, it's like unimaginable. What did I say? Unimaginable. uh, I call bullshit on the Prime Directive. I think it's total bullshit. I think yes, of course, you don't just intervene and start interacting with the species, but you create the conditions, and it's your duty to create the conditions that they grow well. I mean, come on, man. Are you just gonna? Of course, that's what's going to happen. You cannot blame the kids for asshole parents. You see. This supposed to be abolished, and the Prime Directive is supposed to be rehashed and communicated in some sort of more stable way, and maybe in a symbolic way. Some symbol must represent a Prime Directive, and it's probably the infinity sign, because that's what happens when you put everything in the right order. The energy starts flowing like this, and the torus field becomes a reciprocating torus field, and there is an appearance of infinity when temporal. Otherwise, it's like an eight, which torus field splits into two, and that split then looks for the reconnection and creates another abominable way of connecting those two sides, and that is what the evil is, or belief system is. You need to create a belief system to connect that with that, but that's bullshit. That's backwards. And so then there's erroneous prime directive splits those two torus field, but the correct prime directive is supposed to unify that. Okay, this is clearly at a higher level. I mean, now that I see that there is a root for it and the consequences of it, I cannot blame no people that are living on earth and acting like assholes. I can only blame anybody involved and not questioning the the true meaning of this prime directive and allowing this to happen. What is it like? How can I rephrase it in a different way? There's certain souls, light souls, that has architectural authorization, so to speak, and there's sixth density beings. They have to be sixth density beings. Um, they're supposed to be allowed. I mean, what the hell am I saying? I mean, honestly, nobody really needs sixth density being does not need the permission from some muppets. I just don't understand why. I think they are doing it. It's just that it's a little slow, or maybe it's all right. And of course, Earth has its own astral side of it, and it's very obviously clear what is allowed to come in on Earth and what is not. And if this prime directive prevents anybody to modify the astral reality to create a better conditions, not better conditions, but the correct conditions for the growth of the soul, then it's a complete and total bullshit and needs to be overturned. Unless there's an agreement to create one planet that is uh, fucked up. You know, if everybody has holistic systems and they live in harmony, so let's make one planet that is fucked up, just for the fun of it. Maybe that is what they are saying. Because to me, if the intention is genuinely to create an environment for the soul development and enjoyment, then this is not what kind of societal structures should be created. Obviously, it's like if you want to create the reality where things are completely backwards and messed up, then these are the structures you would allow to happen. I mean, look, this isn't rocket science. This is elementary structure of consciousness. I don't know, maybe things could have happened this way that like people never question that prime directive and the true meaning of it, and didn't know how they are actually enforcing evil while pretending that they are enforcing harmony. Or thinking, rather, believing that it's about harmony. I mean, this is like the same fractal, man. This is what happens on all the levels. To me, right now, the discovery of that prime directive in my personal life is very obvious, because there were so many things, so much complexity, and I got to just one thing. And if that one thing is taken care of, everything else is going to be all right. So, makes things simple. Do not commit original sin. Do not let the movement of consciousness to be backwards. Always, if any kind of negative feeling arises, it's trying to make you do stuff. Which, by the way, I mean, now I'm experiencing things with such clarity that, for example, I can go in a group of people, I can feel the energies there. It sort of is trying to enter my consciousness, but I become aware of it, of that cloud, of that bubble, but I still have my attention. But I can see how it's I can see how I can lose it very, very easily, unless I have the intention to keep going back to, putting my attention with awareness. If I don't do that, then all these thought forms enter me and I act them out. And then, of course, these are not my thoughts. No person has their own thoughts. They can run a thread of specific thoughts based on how they choose, and usually they choose subconsciously based on kind of distortions they have. If this bullshit thought resonates, so did they jump on that and then they run that thought, and you see what I'm trying to say. But it's not really theirs. It's just the hive mind has, look, like all these thoughts are the same patterns. They're so boring. Ego is the most boring thing ever. You can categorize them and you can make a little map and say, well, that's the structure of the ego. And then people have like all sorts of insecurities and they think, well, that's my insecurity. I'm the only one who has it. It's like, it's not yours. You're just running it as a script because you still have something that you have not faced on a soul level. And it's a backwards type of movement. I can feel how that movement is trying to make my energy go backwards. Where it's supposed to be flowing in a toroidal field, and then just trying to split that toroidal field. And then when it splits, then I have to get the fix, right? Like then, okay, and maybe I gotta do something to fix that. And that includes lust, that includes addictions, all of these things. Okay. Now, but if I go into that field and I feel how it's trying to take me over, but if I move my attention exactly to the source of that, and you can always find that, it's this most uncomfortable feeling that you can find, and you're going deeper, 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 deeper. And if I place my attention there and zero it out, so to speak, and bring some stillness and compassion there, and to me it feels like warmth, like that, the discomfort, that uncomfortable feeling, It's sort of like zero being zeroed out, and it goes into stillness, and it feels like warm. It's like maybe burning, nigredo. Maybe you can call it that way. Um, and if I keep my attention there long enough, there's a breaking point, and that energy can no longer um, overcome the the infinite, the ecstatic energy, and then in that area, everybody starts acting from the soul, and from the soul, there's a truth, and so now uh, there's no longer these insecure thoughts as running. People are being spontaneous and expressing whatever the soul wants, right? And then everybody's unique, and thoughts are beautiful, and perspectives are beautiful. Everything is amazing then, because it's no longer boring. It's no longer the same boring ass shit, but something beautiful is going on. Something alive is going on. There are souls that are now online. Okay, so and it's that one thing, that one freaking thing. And on an energetic level, I'm very freaking aware of it. In any environment, at any point, in any case, I can find that primordial gate and not let, like Gandalf said, you shall not pass. And that's exactly what it meant. That was a prime directive. Gandalf got it. But I don't know what these Muppets from Galactic Federation or whatever are doing. They either ignorant or corrupt or both. I'm saying Galactic Federation because I just hear people talk about that. That's supposed to be the highest point of the government. Of course, it splits into smaller points of the government, and it's exact same behavior, exact same thing. There's always one breaking the natural law or the law of universe, and everything else is shit again. And society, everything is going to be backwards. Economy is going to be backwards. Society is going to be backwards. People are going to be backwards. Everything's going to be fucking backwards because you broke this primordial law. And universally speaking, that prime directive is masquerading as a true prime directive and is actually illegal. It's not legal. Then you would have to say that the biggest criminals are the people who are enforcing it. And this locking people in jail, it's a bit metaphorical, but there's some certain access that needs to be locked away from them. They still have nice life, and they still can participate in production economy and have a good life, and still have that, you know, get off on whatever they get off, but of course not affecting other human beings, not at the cost of them. And eventually, as society is developed, as the side of consciousness is growing, as side of technology is growing, and eventually they both merge. And I think the way it's going to look like is that you're going to have like robot bodies, robot brains, but soul beings too, sort of controlling those robot bodies and robot brains. You know? Perhaps that's how it's going to look like. I think the most likely, I think I said this before, but I think most likely thing is that these bodies are going to be just like vehicles, and people are just going to be living more on an astral level and logging in to these bodies to do whatever they want on a physical level. But that's what we're talking about, maybe 1,000 years from now. Okay, so that's very good news. Everything is so simple. Everything is about the true Prime Directive. That's what I'm going to be using Prime Directive for, because I'm 100% sure that this, like I've seen it, and you can see it too, that all belief system is hanging on one root. Again, Lord of the Rings. One ring to rule them all. Well, that is the remodeling that Earth needs on all the levels, starting with the biggest level. The biggest level, and for example, if you were to begin your life, living your life like that, and saying, "Well, I'm gonna guard that as much as possible. I'm gonna maintain as much because it feels like peace and bliss, but there you gotta go through a lot of toxic ass shit. And if you play the alchemist game, you are literally guarding that portal. You are securing the real prime directive, and that is the highest impact of what's going to happen on that galactic level and the planet level, because whatever's in your consciousness reflecting all that. So I know how I'm going to live my life, and you choose how you want to live your life. So we are, you know, at least give a chance for our souls to grow. And sometimes I feel like I have to do so much of that so-called adult work, that guarding that portal, guarding those energies for the last couple of years, where I just decided that this is it. I'm just going to dedicate my life to it. I have some time where I can just play around and have my sort of soul coming out and enjoying and having fun. But I wish it was a little bit more balanced. And because it's not balanced, it just shows me that there's a lot of work that needs to be done on that front. And I have to say also that majority of work has been done. But more and more people who have this capacity to alchemize the energies must live like that, because it gives you the most reward also. And that's the true guardian. People talk about guardians of the galaxy, Marvel, and all that stuff, but alchemists are true guardians of the galaxy. And I'm sure that there are very powerful ones Like I don't have anybody. I don't listen to this bullshit Prime Directive. But I'm sure as hell gonna be listening to this true Prime Directive, which is about letting the species or souls, if you will, uh, develop in a garden of souls, and to actually have capacity for growth and enjoyment of life, not this suffering as bullshit and running on a hamster wheel. What the fuck is that? That's just such a insult to any soul incarnating on this planet. It's such a fucking joke. It's an embarrassment. This is what it is. And this is why system, when this happens, this bullshit ass nonsense happens, the consciousness, unbeknownst to these people who are trying to impose that root of all evil, system produces certain souls as net runners. Net runners is another way of calling alchemists. And net runners are these people who have astral authority um, to change the codes to the correct ones without needing any Muppet permission. That's what system does. Um, and when I say system, I mean logos, and I mean that, uh, like another way of saying it, God leaves no soul behind. And that's the good news. Anyway, enough of my ramble. Um, it's been a rough couple of years, but I did discover what I was looking for. And that's it. I can sleep peacefully at night now. Anyway, thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.